All right, we are live for the MMA Vivisection for Bellator 170. Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen. I am joined by Eddie Mercado, who is live on site. Not that it's taking place in whatever apartment he's in, but he is in Inglewood, out there for glory, for Bellator, doing his thing. And Victor Rodriguez, who is not on site, he's wherever he is. He's in the bodega, wherever the bodega is.
On the corner, man. You know where the bodega is.
That's right. I know, but I'm talking about the city. But yes, you're right. He's in the bodega on the corner. You picked the corner with the bodega. Vic is in it right now.
Yes, literally everywhere in the Northeast. The cats are sleeping on the bread as we speak. All
right. So we got this huge Bellator 10-pole event to be talking about. Got a pretty cool main card. You know, obviously the Ortiz-Sonnen fight at the top of it. Paul Daley versus Brennan Ward, Ralek, Gracie, Hisaki Kato, all that good stuff. It's got the big event feel. And it's also got a massive undercard that is filled with slightly interesting fights that I'm going to get to in a minute. But first of all, I just want your thoughts on the fight card in general. What do you think of this card, top to bottom? Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think it's one of the best Bellator cards I have seen in a long time, and that's saying a lot since there's not a single title fight on the entire card. So to draw this much excitement with no belts on the line, I think that really says something to Bellator, and they really beefed up their undercard on this. So I'm really impressed, and I really I like the direction Bellator is heading. It seems like they're really getting their ducks in a row.
Vic, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Eddie here. This is one of the few events where they've pulled out a lot of their talent, and kind of leaves you wondering what they're going to be saving for the next few events. But it doesn't really matter. It certainly seems like they're giving a big treat to the LA audience that should be in attendance. And something this big, you certainly want to showcase a lot of your up and coming talent. They seem to be doing that, and they should be commended for it.
Yeah, you know, and I gotta agree. But the only thing I gotta ask is, considering the size of the event and like the coolness of the fights on the top of the card and how much fun and interest there is, I gotta wonder why they're still stuffing it with fights that nobody cares about at all. Like, why are we still getting the completely random, you know, Gabriel Green versus Jylan Turner 3-0 versus 2-2 fight on the prelims, or Christian Gonzalez versus Daniel Rodriguez? Like, even if these guys are potential prospects, that kind of stuff to me really, like, it has a watering effect where you still look at this card and you're like, who are these people? I have no idea. I kind of wonder why they're doing it for something this big.
They're probably local ticket sellers to fill out the rest of the arena, or, you know, they're just popular in the region.
Yeah, but when you got Chael Sonnen versus Tito Ortiz on the top of it, if you're not already selling out the arena, like...
I don't think it's selling out the arena. I think it's just Bellator, and that's their deal. Yeah. They just have a lot of no-name people on their undercards, and that's just going to be the way it is for a little bit until they get to a certain level where everyone's or soon to be one.
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering, is if they are fundamentally never going to get to that level. If always part of the business model is going to be fill the undercard with a bunch of filler. Because
no way, man. Because not too long ago, they were on a completely different platform, and they were doing tournaments, and it was like a completely different landscape. And it's It's still new under Coker, kind of. I mean, there's still a whole lot being done there.
I know. I feel like this is like, they don't need 18 fights. They could easily have 12 fights on this card, you know?
Very true.
Cut out the filler and have an awesome fight card top to bottom. And it feels to me like the fact that they are still doing it means that they are really invested in this model of filling out a massive undercard just with people. And I don't understand that particularly, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to run through the prelims real quick, because there are a lot of notable fighters on this that people have seen or heard of or have some connection to. A lot of guys that have been in the UFC, a lot of people that have fought other places, and I'm going to run through them real quick because there aren't a lot of really good competitive fights we need to break down on there. Just a lot of interesting names. There's former UFC vet Alex Soto and Guillermo Vasconcelos and Kevin Casey. are all, they're all UFC vets. Jack May is fighting Dave Cryer, which is actually a bit controversial because Cryer's got a bunch of white pride-looking tattoos, some iron crosses,
That's
and
good.
Peckerwood white supremacy gang tattoo on his stomach.
Hey.
Yeah. And then, they got Lyoto's little brother, Chinzo Machida, on here. At one point, still kind of prospect, Curtis Millender, fun action fighter. And couple of, probably the most notable fight on this card is Cody Bollinger versus Henry Corrales. Bollinger being the sort of notably vocal World Series of Fighting vet, tough competitor, guy who made a lot of waves with WSOF and Titan FC. And he's fighting Henry Corrales, who has been who came up out of King of the Cage as something of a fighter that Bellator is used to test their elite fighters, or like bounce their elite fighters off of. He's only had losses in Bellator, but they've come to Daniel Strauss, Emmanuel Sanchez, and Patricio Freire. So he's kind of one of their testing grounds for other talent. And it's got a lot of names, but still, like I say, a lot of filler fights that I'm just kind of wondering about. What are your thoughts on this prelim fight? Anybody that you're particularly excited for, Eddie?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how Kevin Casey does in a new promotion, not facing such top talent. I think he's got a really strong skill set, especially in terms of his grappling. So I'd really like to see him thrive in I don't want to say a smaller pond, but a smaller pond. And Henry Corrales, man, I like his style. He's a fighter's fighter. He's got some pretty unfavorable matchups in his Bellator career. Daniel Strauss, short notice fight against Pitbull, and then a split decision loss to Emmanuel Sanchez, which could have gone either way. Him against Cody Bollinger is going to be fun. Bollinger is no joke. Like, he's a finisher. So I'm really excited to see what happens from that. And then Chinzo Machida, Lyoto's older brother, who's 39, making waves in MMA. He's been fighting for a long time, but he's kind of been really helping his brother, get to where he wanted to be, and now it's kind of his turn. Machida's been on the shelf for a little bit. He won't be back for a while, so it's the other Machida's turn. I'm interested. I like that he's going against someone who's 2-0. So let's see what they can do with him.
Vic, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like those fights as well, especially the the fight between Corrales and Bollinger being perhaps the most competitive that we've got on the undercard among the more notable names. I'm also interested in seeing Colleen Schneider. Her post-Invicta career should be an interesting thing to watch. She had a hell of a fight against Tanya Avenger, probably one of the most competitive fights that we've seen Avenger in quite some time. And also Guillermo Vasconcelos, who's going to be taking on John Mercurio. I should note that neither one of these matchups are necessarily the most competitive or I don't think they're very close, but they should at least be worth watching for the name and the quality of the fighters that we're going to be seeing and to see how they progress. Possibility for upset, yeah, maybe. The sport is random as hell, but you never know. I mean, it could at least be something interesting to see, so it's definitely noteworthy.
All right, and that brings us to our first main card bout. Derek Campos versus Derek Anderson, supposedly at 155. Anderson missed weight by 5 pounds. So it's going to be a 160 catch weight bout, I believe, if they haven't canceled it. And
it's at 161, but yeah.
Yeah, 161 catch weight. So what are your thoughts on this fight, Vic?
Well, the thing about this fight that's really interesting, I mean, Anderson, and we've probably discussed this before, but we've kind of wondered whether or not he should have even been fighting at lightweight for as long as he has. He's had a great degree of success, probably the least predictable amount of success for someone who came up through a very broken regional system as he did, but he's done very well for himself, defeated some top opposition. He's been very technical with his striking, a lot of body shots, a lot of movement. Very, very clever fighter and a lot more talented than people give him credit for. Now, you take on Derek Campos, who's a lot more, his grit and his determination have really made him given him a fair degree of success. And not only that, but the guy hits hard. You know, he keeps his wits about him when he's stunned. So this should definitely be a lot more interesting than some people think. I do have to think that Anderson, despite the situation with the weight, I really think that he's got much more of a complete game. I think that he's got an ability to keep his range where he would want it more so than Campos has. And not only that, but I really think that once it gets to the ground, which would probably be, you know, it's almost inevitable in a fight like this, but it certainly won't be something that would happen on Campos' terms. I think Anderson's probably going to be the one who initiates the takedown, and once it goes from there, he'll certainly be able to establish a lot more control and keep that as well. So I'm going to side with Anderson on this one, probably by decision.
All right, Natty, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a very interesting matchup. Two guys that love to come forward, get in the other guy's face. Anderson, the taller guy with more straight punches. He'll work behind his jab. Derek Campos, he's the kind of guy that'll tilt his head off the center line, throw crazy haymakers, as we saw when he fought Melvin Gillard, and he absolutely stormed his castle. This is tough for me. I've never seen Derek Anderson outgunned in a fight. Never. So, but Derek Campos hits really hard. I don't know. When I look at Derek Campos and his losses, you know, his first two were split decision losses in his early career. And his recent losses have all been by like a particular build fighter. They're all like these explosive powerhouses. Patricky Pitbull, Michael Chandler, Brandon Gertz. These are all just powerful, explosive guys. And Derek Anderson doesn't really fit that mold. I'm usually wrong about Derek Anderson. I'm notoriously poor at picking his fights. But since he missed weight, I'm just going to have to – I was on the fence, but him missing weight, I'm going to go ahead and side with Derek Campos here. Just because it was a coin flip, and that will be the tilting factor is the botched weight cut. So I'm going to pick Derek Campos here, and I think Derek Anderson is just too damn tough to get finished. So I'll take Derek Campos by decision.
Yeah, I'm going with Anderson. I think the big thing actually for me is partially the missed weight, in that I don't, especially when you miss by like 5 or 6 pounds, it kind of makes me feel like kind of the Alex Oliveira thing. Like, A, you shouldn't be fighting in that division, and B, you probably didn't go that far out of your way to cut. Like, you probably were like, you know what, this isn't working, I'm just going to stop cutting. And I don't expect to drain him. Like, I don't expect it to have that big a negative effect on him. And I think otherwise he's, he's 3 inches taller. He's probably going to have a pretty good reach advantage. And he's been able to surprise a lot of people just with how tough and imposing he is. On the flip side, Campos has been able to surprise a lot of people with how much speed and power he has in his hands. I think he's been able to scare a lot of people off just boxing with him. But I don't think Anderson scares, and I think he can. I think he can probably bully Campos with size as the fight goes on. So I'm going to pick Anderson.
Hey, that makes sense, man, because I'm always wrong with Derek Anderson. So both of you guys picking Anderson, I'm picking against him. You guys are probably right here.
Let's see. Anderson is the favorite, opening at -230, basically staying at -230. Not a lot of movement on that line. Campos opening at +170, now out to +186. So
man,
the movement
there's
is
almost some value there. Almost some value with Campos, but I just couldn't recommend it.
Yeah, it's a tough pick. It really, unless the odds were like really skewed out, I'm not surprised Anderson's the favorite, and Campos is not the kind of fighter that I'm just like, nah, he's dynamite, he's an underdog, he's not a knockout machine, he's not the kind of fighter that you can just trust on a whim to really overcome the odds. That brings us to a 145 bout, Georgi Karakhanyan versus Emmanuel Sanchez. And see, Eddie, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Excellent matchup. They paired Emmanuel Sanchez with AJ McKee last time. That fell through. Now he's facing Georgi Karakhanyan, who I feel like is more of an acceptable opponent, considering the experience level of Emmanuel Sanchez. But with that experience, I mean, Karakhanyan has about twice as many fights. And there's something about guys who are like 26-6, like Karakhanyan, like Cowboy Cerrone, guys who have like almost 30 wins and like 6 losses. Those guys are super dangerous, and they're always finishers. And it's as if they just have had so many lessons learned in the cage that they just find ways to get done. Sanchez, on the other hand, this dude is he's an Energizer bunny, man. He just does not stop. I've never seen him tired. He's got fundamental technical kickboxing that I love. His grappling is cavalier, we'll say. He's a little reckless with his diving on certain submissions and positions. So I got to say, his lapses are not in his technique as much as they are in his decision-making. You know, I feel like he's kind of just out there fighting, and whenever it happens, that's what happens. Whereas Karakhanyan, cerebral, a little more crafty, and he is a finisher. Karakhanyan's an absolute killer. So I guess it's Karakhanyan is super opportunistic, and Sanchez in the past has shown a willingness to give up and expose those opportunities. So I'm going to pick Georgi Karakhanyan here. I like Sanchez, but I feel he's too comfortable off of his back sometimes. And I've seen Karakhanyan hold Pat Kern down for almost a whole round, and that is extremely hard to do. So I got to pick Karakhanyan here. And since Sanchez has never been finished, I will think that's going to keep going. So I'll take Karakhanyan by decision.
All right, Vic, what's your pick?
Well, here's the thing with this fight that's so interesting to me, and it's the fact that we've seen Sanchez be so good at establishing his range and mixing everything up. We've seen him really become something from a, decent-looking prospect to an actually really good-looking fighter who's still young and coming up in the game. I don't know if he's ready for anything that would resemble a title shot or anything like that yet, but this is a very good barometer to see where he's at now and whether or not he's ready to take that massive big step. So a win here against Karakhanyan would be a massive feather in his cap. The problem is that even with his recent performances, even seeing as good as he's looked against some recent opposition, I'm not sure that he's actually going to be able to deal with Karakhanyan's speed or his grappling. I do worry about Karakhanyan's timing, though, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to land those big shots that he likes to hit with Sanchez interrupting his flow and his pace. So, there's a really good chance that Sanchez could win this one by decision, but I would not be surprised if this was a situation where Karakhanyan establishes the clinch, is able to press against the cage and start breaking him down from there to eventually take this to the ground and then start working methodically, as he sometimes does, and try to work for a submission or just start pounding him out till his body quits. So, just based on the experience alone, based on the fact that he's beaten really much more established opposition, ideally you would side with Karakhanyan, but I don't know. I got the sneaking suspicion that Sanchez very well might take this. I think he's actually going to have the tools necessary to prevent Karakhanyan from establishing his particular from establishing his pace and being able to fight the way he wants to fight. So I'm going to go with Sanchez on this for the upset.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight for me. That I may be going towards Sanchez as well, just because Karakhanyan, like, the thing with Sanchez being a Rufus Sport fighter, their grappling games are almost universally really pretty tight. Like, even if he's overly aggressive, even if he is willing to play guard too much, there's a reason he's never been submitted in any of his fights. It's because they teach grappling well over there. And Karakhanyan has won like 5-6 decisions in his 35 fight career. Like, he is just not a fighter that is good at, like, he if he finishes you, great, but otherwise he's not the kind of fighter that tends to take a lot of decisions. He doesn't tend to lose a lot either. That's the other side. But I worry, like, I don't know that if he can't submit Sanchez or knock him out, then I feel like Karakhanyan just has these weird gaps in his style. Mostly he just doesn't wrestle, And because he doesn't wrestle, there's a real disconnect between his grappling and his striking. And the way his striking game is set up, it's not really set up to deal with wrestling. And it's got these weird, funky holes in it that I think better and good fighters tend to be able to exploit, which is kind of, to me, why Karakhanyan is the guy who tends to beat a lot of either inexperienced or just less athletic fighters. And I don't know, I think Sanchez may be just barely that level that can get by Karakhanyan, can solve his style, can outwork him standing and just throw more volume and then on the ground survive, or be the guy getting takedowns and making Karakhanyan bite on guillotines that he's not going to get or stuff like that. So I'm leaning Sanchez too, but it's a very dangerous fight for him, and there's a real chance too that Sanchez isn't a finisher. He's not, and so he's going to have to outpoint guys to beat him, and he doesn't tend to get that close. Like all of his wins lately in Bellator when he's taken a step up in competition have been razor thin. Split decision over Henry Corrales, split decision over Justin Lawrence, split decision over Daniel Pineda. So it's a tough fight. I feel like it's a real tipping point fight where it's like, is Sanchez actually good enough to get by Karakhanyan, or is he just not quite the right? Is he just under the level that Karakhanyan can school? I'm going slightly over, but it's not a safe fight to me. Betting lines on this are pretty close. Karakhanyan is the favorite, opening at minus 165, moving to minus 137. And Sanchez, the underdog, opening at plus 125, now to plus 114. So those odds are tightening up as they go. And I'm not surprised that this is moving towards being a coin flip fight, honestly.
Is there an over-under for this? Because Sanchez and his decisions, man.
Yeah, fight goes to decision is minus 260. So over 2.5 rounds is minus 275. So you'd be safe, or your better bet is for the finish, and that's not a good bet, unfortunately.
Stay away from this one.
Yeah, it has a real feeling of coin flip to me, because Karakhanyan, he struggles against elite competition. A lot of his wins, even against good prospects, are that guy just ran in and left his neck out too many times and Karakhanyan subbed him. It's not so much like Karakhanyan just owning somebody with his better moment-to-moment fighting.
The same token, Sanchez doesn't own anybody, right? Like every single one of his fights is like debatable. So
yeah, it could easily be headed. We could be headed towards a tight split decision.
Or a draw, even. I wouldn't be surprised if they went to a draw, honestly. Is there a prop for that?
There's probably a massive prop for that. Let's see. Fight is a draw, plus 5,000. So if you're feeling lucky,
I would put $1 on that.
Put $1 on that. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the non-craziness. Hisaki Kato, I say this, but honestly, it's a Hisaki Kato fight, so it's going to be crazy. Ralek Gracie versus Hisaki Kato, middleweight bout. Vic, what are your thoughts?
Oh, we're really fucking doing this? Like, for serious? Oh, wow. Yeah, no. Hisaki Kato, whatever. Next.
Yeah, just all in on Hisaki?
Well, just
Eddie?
for the record, the last time you said that about Hisaki Kato, you were wrong. But you said that about Schilling. I think the world has this fight misread. I think it's completely the other way. I got Gracie 100% in this. Reason being is Kato is ridiculous on the feet, right? Gracie is terrible on the feet, right? Zero footwork, zero head movement. His elbows come up. I mean, he is sitting there asking to be kicked in the liver, right?
He strikes like a guy who has seen Nick Diaz strike and then wants to emulate it.
That's too much credit, man. Nah, I'm not even buying that. He is a born grappler. He's meant to grapple.
He's seen Hoyt's fight, and he's like, I can strike like that.
Royce, I mean, say what you want, but he had that little front kick entry to the double leg. I mean, Royce had the setups, man. He had the MMA wrestling before anybody else.
He had the oblique kick. That's real.
Well, but my thing with this is Ralek hasn't fought in forever. He got 2 arm bars. He fought Sakuraba, and then he had that 3rd round wardrobe malfunction ex machina where his pants fell down and the ref had to stop it in mid-Kimura, and it kind of saved him. But if you go back and watch Hisaki Kato versus Joe Schilling in the MMA match, Kato did not do very well. Yeah, he got Schilling down, but he couldn't hold him down. And, I mean, he was making a lot of tactical errors when it comes to the ground game, like leaving his hands on the mat and all these just small little nuances that I feel like are going to get capitalized on very quickly. And I honestly can't see Kato surviving on the ground with Gracie. So I'm taking Gracie here, and I think the world has this fucked up.
Oh,
you're assuming. Hang on a second. You're assuming that this is going to go to the ground on Gracie's terms. I'm not really sold on that.
If it goes to the ground on anyone's terms, Kato has made a mistake because his grappling is trash.
Yes.
But
yes,
if you believe Eddie, there is money to be made here because Gracie is a sizable underdog. He opened at plus 175 and is now up to plus 262. So if those odds keep getting wider, there may be a small bet to be made. Here, even better. Let's see. Gracie wins by submission. They don't have it. You just have to go Gracie inside the distance. And that's plus 353. So you can get Gracie inside the distance at plus 353. And if Gracie, you think Gracie could win a decision? You would bet on him?
Hell yeah. I think he could definitely lay on top of Kato for 3 rounds. Absolutely.
And not submit him?
It's not worth the chance. Like, the Gracie philosophy is like exhaust your opponent, control them.
Advocated betting $1 on fucking Georgi Karakhanyan versus Emmanuel Sanchez being a draw. And you're now telling me that it's not worth the chance that Ralek Gracie could submit Emmanuel.
Guys.
I feel like no. There definitely is a chance a great chance that that's going to happen. But the safer bet is just to pick Gracie here instead of trying to micromanage it into, well, is he going to win by finish? Just pick Gracie. Telling you, put a little something on Gracie. You'll thank me later.
Gracie by decision.
You guys,
plus 950.
Nah. Just pick Gracie.
Listen, you want an argument against legalized pot? There you go. There's your fucking argument. Eddie goes to California. All this shit happens. You start smoking that, the devil's lettuce. This is what happens. You go out there in the mountains, start getting high with fucking Sanjay Gupta on CNN, and this is what happens. You end up with shitty betting advice. This is what happens. Tell you, kids. Right. Not even once, kids.
We will see. We will see.
On that note, we got the co-main event: Paul Daley versus Brennan Ward. Eddie, talk some sense.
Fireworks. Oh my goodness. Brennan Ward has been involved in 15 straight finishes. Like, this dude is a savage. He's going to take you out or you're going to take him out, and it's going to be exciting. His last fight was Saad Awad. He came out and he did the whole wrestling thing, and he had Saad Awad up against the fence, and Awad pulled his card. He's like, hey, man, what are we doing here? You trying to wrestle or you want to bang? And Ward's like, oh, yeah? Separated, and then just straight knocked him out. And, man, he is scary. His power is scary. It's in both of his hands. And he can wrestle. He can definitely wrestle. The knock on Ward has been his fight Q, and he has struggled against higher caliber opponents. Tamden McCrory, Alexander Shlemenko, Cyborg Santos. So, there is a certain ceiling, or at least there has been, for Brennan Ward. And then on the other side, Paul Daley, who's been fighting my entire adult life, phenomenal kickboxer. I mean, he has honed his craft. That dude can strike. Submission game doesn't really exist. And you got to wonder, with the high mileage, how shot is he? How the athleticism and explosiveness of Brennan Ward? I mean, Brennan Ward's in his prime right now. I mean, he is an animal. And, I mean, that's something you got to look at. Paul Daley's last fight, he was supposed to fight Derek Anderson for an injury. It didn't look good. I'm not sure. This one's a little tricky. But I think because Ward struggles with veterans, I think I'm going to pick Daley here. But how, I can't tell you how it's going to end. With Ward being such a finisher or a B-finish kind of guy, I can see him getting knocked out. But there's something inside me that says this is going to a decision.
Oh.
So I'm going to pick Paul Daley, and I'm going to pick him by decision.
Wow. All right, Vic. I asked Eddie to talk sense. He gave me Paul Daley by decision. Help me out, Vic.
Well, here's the situation with that. I do think that Brennan Ward, despite the degree of experience that he's accumulated so far and the sort of recent performances, the tendencies that we've seen in his recent performances, I still think that he would be susceptible to getting dropped by some clever setup that Daley would use to really use that left hand that is the one that's been putting people to sleep. However, I just don't think that Brennan Ward's going to go in there and fight stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems to me that it would only make the most sense that he would be able to start establishing his wrestling game early and use that against Daley as best he can, you know, start wearing him out. Daley's had problems with his cardio in the past. He's had problems with his wrestling in the past. It only makes sense that Brennan Ward go out there and make this as ugly as possible and beat him within an inch of his life on the ground. If it's going to go anywhere, it's going to be on the ground. I mean, I don't know what it would take for him to say, yeah, no, you know what, we're going to stand and bang. I'm going to use your strengths against you, against Paul Daley. I just don't see it happening. Although he might be reckless enough to do it. I would hope not, but you know, it just doesn't seem like something that's very likely. So I'm going to go with Brennan Ward, playing it relatively safe, but still making it violent enough to win this fight. Probably by TKO, maybe in the third or something.
Brennan Ward is one of those few fighters that I think will just slug it out with anybody. Like, I don't really see Brennan Ward being like, nah, I'm going to game plan around this dude. Like, he has all the chips on his shoulder. Like, if there's ever been a fighter that has a chip on his shoulder, it's like he's like Phil Baroni style chip on the shoulder. You know?
Yes. But like not as disrespectful, not quite as disrespectful.
Not quite. But I mean, nobody's quite as disrespectful as Phil Baroni. Like,
no, you're right.
But he's still like, he's the guy who's just gonna be like, you know, fuck you. You think you can hit me? I can hit you. Kind of like that's his fighting style. And I do worry though that I mean, I don't know that Paul Daley. The big thing with Paul Daley is he's still got power, he's still got technique, but I don't think he has the same speed that he used to. The same, like the same ability to change speeds on his punches and to really shock people. And the guys he's been knocking out lately, a lot of them are just not very good. They're not dudes that he should be fighting. Like they're dudes to get him wins and show off his power. I hate to think of picking Brennan Ward by KO, but I could easily see this being a kind of sad KO win for Brennan Ward. And I'm also at the point with Paul Daley where he's been fighting long enough that I'm just not picking him for anything. Like, I just can't. You know? Even if I should.
Honestly, his last name win was Scott Smith in Strikeforce in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an argument there.
Yeah.
We have no idea what Brennan Ward is like in the third round because we haven't seen it since like 2012 or something.
Yeah, I
so
think
that might be
this could be a quick and violent fight where Ward is just faster to the punch, and before Daley can adjust to that speed, Ward will have hurt him. That's kind of my feeling. But that's a gut feeling, and fighters get to a point in their careers where I just don't pick them for wins. I just, you know, whether I think that they have the right style matchup or not, I think it just doesn't make sense anymore. Paul Daley is the favorite, though, coming into this bout. Minus 170, now opening at minus 170, now at minus 124. and Brennan Ward opening at plus 130. Now at plus 101. These odds are moving closer and closer to even, which is closer and closer to correct in my estimation, because I do believe that even if this is a decision, I would not confidently pick either man to win the decision. Brennan Ward could out-wrestle Paul Daley. Paul Daley could just kind of continually slightly hurt and not finish Brennan Ward for 3 rounds. And I would not bet on it. Like, it's 2 guys who have a lot of power and a lot of aggression. That brings us to our main event. Chael Sonnen, Tito Ortiz. Vic, what are your thoughts?
I think we're in for a night of absolute misery with this because it's not going to be pretty. Here's a problem with this. I mean, this isn't a wrestling match, so we shouldn't really exactly expect some sort of grappling exhibition galore or anything like that here. What we're going to see is Tito Ortiz using his size, using his experience to try to take down Sonnen, eventually succeeding at some point, and then just using elbows and just ruining him from there. Sonnen hasn't fought in, 3 years, 4 at this point? It's been a while, right? He hasn't fought since, So, I mean, who knows where he's at right now? But to assume or to think that he's got any sort of significant chance of winning this fight, I just don't see it. I don't think he's savvy enough with his submissions off his back. And that's really where he's going to be spending a lot of his time, save for the case that maybe he might snatch some sort of guillotine or something off a takedown. I mean, that's really the only way I see this happening. Much like he did against Shogun in that FS1 show, I don't really see much hope for Sonnen here. His boxing isn't enough to hurt Tito. He's not going to be able to physically impose himself and be able to control Tito, and whether it's standing positions against the cage, whether it's using some sort of odd scramble to get out. I mean, he's going to mostly be using his wrestling as an evasive measure, I would assume. But there's not really much that he can do to control Tito, especially not at this point in their lives and their careers. So as shot as they both are, smart money's got to be on Tito, I'd imagine. And it should be that way, and that's kind of how it's going to go. So I would imagine Tito busting up Sonnen really badly.
All right. I have my own thoughts there, but Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think there is no smart money in this fight whatsoever.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Do not bet on this, or don't even joke about betting on this. Like, this is one you just stay away because it's so unpredictable. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen. So sorry, Zane, I'm not going to do any kind of analysis. I'm just going to run through a really quick top 10 favorite moments of mine of Tito Ortiz, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be an MMA fan, and I wouldn't even be on this show or anything like that. So real fast. Playing PlayStation 1 on the first ever UFC video game. That was awesome. He slammed the late Evan Tanner in 30 seconds, knocking him out. He's one of the first guys to stand up to the UFC. When he got spanked, literally, by Randy Couture, that was awesome. All 3 of his fights with Ken Shamrock, both of his Chuck fights, nearly submitting Machida, the club and sub of Ryan Bader, and putting Alexander Shlemenko to sleep. I'm picking Tito Ortiz by submission.
All right. I got to say, I think, I don't think there's any reason to trust Tito Ortiz any more than Chael Sonnen in this fight, or to trust the Tito Ortiz. Like, you cannot, there's no reason Chael Sonnen cannot beat Tito Ortiz. None. You know, Tito Ortiz, like, it's just not. Matt Hamill could beat Tito Ortiz. Like, there's no reason to say that Chael Sonnen can't.
Yeah.
The big thing to me too is that I don't think that I'm not sure that Chael Sonnen has lost as much of a step as Ortiz has either. Like, the last we saw of him was his Rashad Evans fight, and that was an ugly fight and an ugly loss. But that's not any less ugly than Tito Ortiz's some of his late career fights, or his loss to Liam McGeary. Like, I don't know that says much about. We don't know where Sonnen. I don't know where Sonnen is right now, and I don't know. I have more faith in Sonnen's striking, and I don't know that either of them are necessarily going to get the other one down. They're both pretty decent defensive and offensive wrestlers. And if this is a striking bout, I kind of feel like I may have more faith in Sonnen's boxing and cardio at this point in his career. Ortiz has never been, neither guy has been a particularly comfortable striker, but I feel like Sonnen has created a little more natural rhythm to it. Like he's more comfortable with his hands, even if he's not necessarily better there. So I'm actually going to lean towards Chael Sonnen not coming out of retirement unless he thought he could win this fight and being in pretty good shape and beating Ortiz and ruining Tito Ortiz's birthday again 20 years later.
That would be funny. That would actually be very funny.
Chael has 16 decisions under his belt. So he's won 16 decisions. He knows how to win rounds. Yeah. But he's also lost by submission 8 times. So who really knows what's going to happen here?
Yeah, neither guy is a great submission artist. Neither guy is a great boxer, and both of them are really functional, solid offensive and defensive wrestlers. So it's just not a fight. It's going to probably be a lot like the Tito Ortiz Stephan Bonner fight, except I expect that Chael will be in a lot better condition to fight than Stephan Bonner was, where they're just staring at each other for 15 minutes and circling.
Yeah, God.
So odds on that fight, Chael Sonnen is coming in as the favorite, in fact, opening at -260, now at -206. Tito Ortiz, the underdog, opening at +180, now at +169. So,
yeah, I mean,
stay away. Stay away. Trust me.
I'd stay away from that. That's a good one. Stay away.
It's not the same fight, but there's a major smacking of the Royce Gracie versus Ken Shamrock bout where you're like, oh no, they're gonna I'm prepared for like a fun fight that's gonna be weird, and it's over in like a minute after Royce Gracie knees Shamrock near his groin, and Shamrock immediately folds like a lawn chair. Like you don't want to bet on these kinds of fights. You don't.
No, you don't.
All right. On that note, Eddie, you got any last thoughts about this show before we close it out?
Just tune in. It's going to be good. Definitely one of Bellator's better events. If you're attending, come say hello to me. Just don't be weird.
Be weird, dudes. Be weird.
Be very weird. Stick your finger in his ear and his mouth. Do it. It's awesome. Play with his man bun. Flick it with your finger like that.
Rub it on your
hand. Just don't go Brett Rogers on me. Don't go Brett Rogers.
Oh, ooh, damn! This got real dark real quick.
No,
Jesus.
no.
Okay. No, let's not do that. Okay. No, I got nothing else. Tune in. It should be fun. I mean, listen, there's no UFC this weekend, but fights and some of them with good divisional implications. So give it a chance. Should be a good show.
All right. So you can find me on Twitter at DZane7. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find Eddie on Twitter at The Eddie Mercado. You can find all three of us over at Bloody Elbow in our various roles, or Eddie over at Bellator 170 in the crowd, looking for weird dudes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. That helps us a ton. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. Those things help us out a bunch. That's where you get all the latest BE shows, videos, interviews, analysis, all that good stuff that we do week in, week out. We will be back next week with the Vivisection for UFC on Fox 23. And If I Did It, and Care Don't Care, and all our heavy hands, all our good stuff. And I believe Nate will have a 6th round planned. I'm not sure that it will include me as of yet, but you can tune in after the fights for some post-fight thoughts and analysis. So thanks, everyone, and we will see you next time.